having fun. Even if you're an idiot, I don't see why you want to die so young.
That's right, Cat and Hutch are back in this sequel to 1967's God Forgives... I Don't! Exclamation point. God Forgives I Don't 2? Cruise Control? No. God Forgives I Don't 2, The Legend of Bill San Antonio's Gold? No. The actual title is Ace High and it came out in 1968. Reteaming Italian actors Terence and Bud Spencer, who reprised their roles from the first film as Cat Stevens, the knife-throwing, card-playing badass who has the actual acrobatic skills of a real cat, and Hutch Bessie, the always draped in fur, burly beast of a man with a brute strength, so strong nothing can take him down. So, are you ready for another adventure with Cat and Hutch? Well, too bad, because this movie gives first billing to actor Eli Wallach, believe it or not. Even though it is technically their movie. You see, actor Eli Wallach was 2 years fresh out of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which had far more international success. So he was a far more bigger name. This movie also features American actors Brock Peters and Kevin McCarthy. So with the local and European success of God Forgives I Don't, director Giuseppe Colizzi was apparently given the green light to go ahead and make a part 2. A sequel with a far bigger budget and its main backer being Paramount Pictures as its main distributor. A sequel that picks up right where the first film left off. So in that case, previously on God Forgives I Don't. Last time in God Forgives I Don't, Cat Stevens and Bill San Antonio shoot it out over a chest full of gold that Bill robbed from a train. Cat wins the shootout, of course, and Bill San Antonio crawls for his life and tries to bite the fuse that's burning towards an explosive death. But he's too late and blows up anyway. Cat and Hutch escape safely in a covered wagon with the gold in the back. The end. Or so we thought. So Ace High starts with that same covered wagon riding into the town of El Paso as the stand for a hangman's noose is being constructed. And once again we are treated to a brilliant spaghetti western score. Less explosive and epic than God Forgives I Don't, but definitely a great score. The entire soundtrack to this movie is awesome. I love it just as much as God Forgives I Don't. And believe it or not, I found a channel on YouTube where a guy does cover songs to spaghetti western soundtracks. It's really an awesome channel. If you're really into spaghetti westerns and love the music, I would check out this channel. This guy actually did a cover soundtrack of Ace High. And I'm going to try and use some of his music in this video and see if it gives me some sort of copyright claim. I don't see why not. This guy's posting his own shit on YouTube. But I think it would only be fair to give the channel and artist the due credit before I just start using their version of the same music. I think they did a really good cover. So if you're interested, it's called Ryuki Bass. I think I'm pronouncing that right. At YouTube. It's a YouTube channel. And he covers spaghetti western soundtrack. It's really awesome. So the credits roll on as Cat and Hutch ride through town. And you can already tell the production value has gone up here. So we ride on through the credits where Hutch has a moment with a cow herder. Then has another moment with a weird looking kid with big ears. The wagon then comes to a stop in front of the local sheriff's station, and Cat and Hutch get off and head inside. They bust the door open and step inside looking for the sheriff, only to find a sleeping deputy.
Go back to the bar.
And right off the bat, you notice two differences here. First, Cat has a new voiceover. Yeah, another actor is doing his voiceover this time. It's a little weird.
You say something?
It's a little step up, I guess, from the over-the-top southern one from the first film.
I think I'll offer you what you so kindly offered me a year ago.
Now this is the same voiceover they end up using in the third film as well, and there is a copy that I've seen, the American version of God Forgives I Don't, where they use this same actor to dub over Terence Hill's voice. It's less southerny and it's a little more believable, but it still looks weird over Terence Hill, because you know it doesn't match up right.
Some time ago there was a reward out for Bill San Antonio. 5,000, I believe.
I am fine with it though. It does help make him into the character that he is, because in reality he does have an Italian accent. And the second difference is, of course, that he's even more beautiful than ever. Yeah, I mean, Terence Hill only gets better with age. I mean, just look at those eyes. So blue. So the deputy explains that the sheriff is out fishing, but will be back for tomorrow's hanging. Yeah, wouldn't want to miss that shit. A public hanging, right? Always brings in the crowds. That was like a day at the movies in the Wild West. So the deputy offers his assistance, which Cat takes by inquiring about the reward out for Bill San Antonio, and even offers him all that's left of him. His memorable Bill hat, and one single boot. And if you notice in the first film, for continuity and how consistent they were with this, his hat is just sitting on the ground in the background. So it is consistent. It was far enough away to survive the blast. There it is, safely away from the blast. It's like, do you think they just looked at that and said, you know what, let's bring back Bill's hat. It's safe in the background. We can incorporate that into the next movie. Sadly though, with no body, this is not enough to collect the rewards since Bill was blown up. To pieces probably, I'm guessing. He was right next to the explosion. So they leave and go to the Herald Bank to return the $300,000 in gold that was stolen by Bill. Now, in the first film, Bill San Antonio claimed that he was working with the president of the Herald Bank, making him just as much of a criminal as Bill. Kat has plans to take advantage of this fact. So this is when they request to see the bank president, Mr. Harold. And they get the old no visitors without appointment spiel, which Kat and Hutch casually ignore, especially Hutch. I mean, they really make themselves at home here. And again, you can tell the production value on the interior sets have definitely gone up too. I mean, this is a nice looking little bank here. Even the bank I go to doesn't look this nice. I mean, they've come a long way from dilapidating shacks from the first film. So anyway, Hutch nicknames a bank employee Buttercup. Yeah, and orders him to go unload the gold and bring it on in, because we returned your precious gold, dipshits.
Get that case out there unloaded now, Buttercup.
Giving us a hard time already. We could have just kept this shit. Why they didn't, I don't know. You know, because Hutch works for the insurance company. See? Paying attention, you'll know these things. You know, they don't mention the fact in this movie that Hutch works for the insurance company that insured the gold. You had to see the first one to know that fact.
Why are you so interested in this business?
The Herald Bank took out a policy for the whole amount against its safe arrival. I work for the insurance company.
A lot of things you have to know from the first film to understand what's going on in this film. So then they make their way towards Mr. Harold's office at their own leisure, and his doofy little secretary already doesn't approve of their dirty ways. All over the carpet. Ain't that a shame? Just get a dustbuster. So this stooge gives Kat and Hutch the same spiel as before about seeing Mr. Harold, and like before, they just sort of do what they want and push this little weasel around. I mean, look at this guy. He's screaming to be pushed around by society. So then, by using Bill San Antonio's name, that allows them a visit with Mr. Harold, the bank president. And while they're waiting to see if he'll see them, Kat and Hutch notice this huge painting of Mr. Harold, the bank president, just hanging up on the wall. It definitely captures his likeness, as you'll soon see. I mean, how cocky can you be to have a painting of yourself in your own bank? Yeah, that's all we get so far as a painting. I mean, they really like holding out and showing this guy. But at that point, Kat and Hutch have different ideas. See, Hutch thinks that Bill San Antonio was lying about being partners with the bank president. However, Kat does not. He thinks Bill was telling the truth and wants to blackmail the president into a payoff so good it'll be enough for the both of them to retire on. So eventually the president does agree to see them, thinking that it's Bill San Antonio. More than likely that means Kat is right, and that they were indeed partners. So Kat and Hutch step into his office and close the door. And still, we don't physically see this guy yet. As the secretary stooge goes back to work, he hears the president getting the crap kicked out of him by Kat and Hutch behind closed doors. We never see anything, just Kat and Hutch emerging from his office with a handwritten check that they immediately cash in for gold. So while they're waiting for the bank to get their gold together, they decide to check out El Paso's local attractions. I mean, why not? And now that they're rich, Hutch buys a fancy new suit. Gets his picture taken old-timey style, which was new-timey then, and all while holding a dove that some local dick shoots dead. And this, of course, irritates Hutch. Don't blame him. Must be an animal lover, too. So he gets up and he gives the guy a classic Bud Spencer fist bonk on the head, kabloink, which then causes a slightly wacky fight to ensue. Sort of foreshadowing the slapstick wackiness of the Trinity films to come. So this fight completely destroys Hutch's fancy new suit. Oh well, he looks better draped in fur anyway. The fight gets so heated that even Kat's forced to join in. Then, for some reason, seemingly oblivious to the whole street brawl going on, high school marching band crashes through the whole thing and moves right on. So then they take a rest after the fight as Kat eats a random white thing that he finds floating in a horse trough.
I've had enough fun.
You know, I noticed that he ate a random white thing in the last movie too. So Cat likes to eat random round white things. As this happens, Cat and Hutch watch as the locals finish putting up the hangman's noose. Then they use it to transition to the focal point of the plot, the man to be hanged tomorrow. We follow the noose from there to a prison cell where we find Eli Wallach sitting. He's the one to be hanged. And this is where we finally get to see Mr. Harold, the bank president, in the flesh. Finally, here he is. The man himself, from Bill's story in the first film, to the painting of him in the bank, to him getting his ass kicked behind closed doors. And here he is, and he looks just like his painting. As I said, really captured his likeness. So he's there visiting Eli Wallach in prison and is trying to make some kind of a deal with him. However, Wallach is being stubborn and not responding. But when Mr. Harold mentions that he can break him out of prison and free him from the noose, he starts to show a little slight interest. So Harold goes on to explain to him that he can arrange his breakout so that he can go after Cat and Hutch for him, and retrieve his gold and kill them, I presume? And if you notice, Mr. Harold is wearing his arm in a sling, suggesting that Hutch probably broke his arm during a scuffle we never saw in his office. Harold then mentions that he recently lost a partner in crime, that being, of course, Bill San Antonio. And he offers Eli Wallach his position on his staff of criminals, I guess. Apparently there's an opening. Because Eli Wallach and this Mr. Harold were apparently friends once and have some sort of history together. And you get the sense that their friendship went sour somewhere along the line, and we soon find out why. So knowing that this is probably his one and only chance to escape the hanging sentence, he agrees to go along with this. Then we pan down to this little spinny toy Wallach likes to carry around, just to add to his character, I guess. Bit of an oddball, which Eli Wallach plays so well. He's almost just reprising his role of Tuco from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, only not quite. He plays it the same, though. His character is written so well enough for him, with so many strange characteristics, that he even overshadows Cat Stevens when it comes to personality and character development. Again, making this seem like it's more of his movie than Cat and Hutch, who seem like side characters in their own sequel. Just along for the ride this time, I guess. But it works just fine for me because Eli Wallach is just so good at playing. Plus, it really helps that his voice isn't dubbed over by somebody else. That's Eli Wallach's real voice right there. That's pure Wallach. Where we see two of Harold's hired goons make their way into the sheriff's office to spring Eli Wallach. And I think one of these goons also played one of the card-playing goons at the beginning of God Forgives I Don't. So, same actor, could be the same character, since he did survive God Forgives I Don't. And that's saying a lot for that film, since mostly everybody dies. So the two goons kill the deputy with a knife to the back and proceed to break Wallach out of his cell. And they're not very nice to him about it either.
Get moving.
As if it's some sort of inconvenience for them.
Hurry up.
Like they're real pillars of the community or something. So when Wallach sees the murdered deputy with a knife in his back, he uses the deputy's gun to shoot the two dicks who sprung them. All in classic Eli Wallach fashion, too.
It works.
Talks the whole time, even when no one's around. Ah, this is why they wrote in that stormy night then. That way no one heard the gunfire or just assumed it was thunder. So then he does this weird, scratchy twitch thing that he does. Yeah, he has some issues, I guess. Bit of a nutter. So instead of getting the hell out of there like any normal escapee would do, he has a seat, soaks his feet, and even acquires a new pair of shoes from one of his dead victims. Aww. That's classic Eli Wallach acting right there. Almost like he's doing a bit in a sketch or something. So then we cut to Harold, who's waiting in his office when he's surprised by Wallach. I don't do that. And he immediately goes right back into Eli Wallach method acting and starts just making himself at home. He likes to talk Wallach while making himself at home in someone else's surroundings, without their permission, of course. Sort of like Cat and Hutch at the bank. They just do what they want and go where they want, help themselves to whatever's around, with no regards for anyone else's feelings. And with all this talking that he likes to do, you can see why he would consider Eli Wallach for Bill San Antonio's replacement. Another big talker. Yet, Wallach's rants are not in vain. We're actually able to get a glimpse into the history between these two characters. Apparently 15 years ago, before Eli Wallach was sentenced to 15 years of hard labor in a prison camp, for some reason, he was friends with Harold and the two rode and worked together. With two other guys who Eli Wallach inquires about. You know, asking, what's the old gang been up to since I've been in prison? One of the guys is a Mexican named Paso, who went back to Mexico years ago.
Paco went back to Mexico. Years ago.
And finally a man named Drake, who went on to settle in a place called Fair City, somewhere near Memphis, where he went into business for himself. Doing exactly what, we don't know yet.
What about Drake?
He settled in Fair City, near Memphis, went into business.
So there you have it. Eli Wallach's old gang. Harold, Paco, and Drake. Established. And important to the plot. You get the sense that the three had some sort of falling out with Eli Wallach's character. That's when Wallach produces the knife used to murder the deputy. As he goes on to explain, he only noticed the knife because it once belonged to him. Wallach then figures that Mr. Harold did this to frame him for the deputy's murder, since the two goons he sent to bust him out were way too stupid. This kind of setup came from a more refined mind.
But from a more refined mind.
So Wallach goes on, yep, more Eli Wallach talking. But like I said, none of it's in vain. All important to the plot. He then explains that after getting out of prison, not long later, that very same knife was stolen from him and used to kill someone he didn't even know. But nonetheless, it was enough to land him in prison with a hanging sentence. So all of this was orchestrated by Mr. Harold just to use Eli Wallach's character as a patsy. A real clever douche, this guy. Or, like Bill said, a real good businessman.
A real good businessman.
They're rather consistent with this, if anything. But you see, for Mr. Harold, the arrival of Cat and Hutch changed everything. Harold didn't like being pushed around and blackmailed like that by two fucking drifters out of the desert.
Actually, it's because those two sort of took the shine off your image.
So he needed to use someone to take care of them for him while he stayed safely in the clear as usual. So not only has Eli Wallach figured out that Mr. Harold had him framed for murder and given a death sentence only to break him out to do his dirty work for him, all while framing him for another murder. Wallach is rightfully pissed at this guy for these numerous fuckovers. Therefore, Wallach has no intention of doing this guy any favors, unless he has concrete proof that he won't screw him over again. But at this point, we do trust this guy. So the mutual agreement at this point is nah. And Wallach guns him down. There's your concrete proof, you a-hole.
There, that's proof enough for me.
So, cut to the next day where we meet back up with Cat and Hutch, who are riding through the desert when Hutch goes on about his future plans, now that he's rich. And if you listen, what he says is sort of consistent with where we find him in the third film, Boot Hill. However, Cat shows no interest in this and takes a little cat nap. That's when a stranger rides past him. Hutch kindly says hello to the stranger as they pass, only he's no stranger. It's actually Eli Wallach, and he's open for business with his guns on them and all. In a sly little Wallach move. Waka waka, boing. So he messes with them for a bit and steals the gold he knew they had before abandoning them horseless in the desert.
Oh, don't take it so badly.
Doesn't kill them. He may be nuts, but he's not just some ruthless killer. Still, Hutch vows to track him down and get his gold back.
The world is too small for you to get far enough away from me. I'll find you sooner or later.
That's when Wallach leaves them with one of his first pieces of grandfatherly advice.
My grandfather always used to say, even if you have a small advantage, be careful not to lose it. In the best of circumstances, you'll be considered a fool. I always find myself in trouble if I don't follow my grandfather's advice.
So Cat and Hutch have to trek 30 miles on foot before finally finding another living soul.
And you save your breath. We have 30 miles to do before we see a living soul.
Thankfully, they're helpful, friendly, and understanding folk, too.
Stay here. They need water and food, I think.
Again, a far less bleak universe this time around. People with seemingly normal lives. Folks who had also had the pleasure of meeting Eli Wallach before their arrival. And boy was he ever so giving. After hearing this old guy's sob story, he gave $5,000 of Cat and Hutch's gold. Of course, this only fuels Hutch's constant rage even more. And finally, in this scene, we get to hear Eli Wallach's character's name, spoken for the first time, as far as I could find.
You're going to get a loan from Kokopolis.
It's Kopocalypse. Kopocalypse. It's Greek.
A Greek name. My grandfather was a Greek.
So Cat and Hutch get the goods that Kopocalypse took off on a wagon with a tightrope walker headed to a local town to join up with a fair. Cat and Hutch immediately go there to find Kopocalypse before he spends all of their remaining dough. They end up finding the tightrope walker and his lovely assistant, who's being harassed by the locals, forcing Cat to step in. Then there's this weird shot of a stuntman turning into actor Brock Peters, who's playing Thomas the Tightrope Walker. He immediately joins forces with Cat and Hutch to teach these local pricks how to treat a lady. So later that night they get the lowdown from Thomas about Kapocalypse and his current whereabouts. According to Thomas, who's friendly as hell by the way, always smiling, even right before a shootout. So according to Thomas, Kapocalypse left last night to go across the border to Mexico to settle an old affair. Now, if you've been paying attention, you can probably deduct that Kapocalypse is going to Mexico to find and kill his old pal, Paco, his former gang member, the one who helped send him up the river 15 years ago. As Mr. Harold previously informed him, Paco went back to Mexico years ago.
Paco went back to Mexico years ago.
So this sets Cat and Hutch off to Mexico now to track down Kapocalypse, and whatever is left of their gold at this point. So then we get this nice riding to Mexico scene. And according to IMDb, portions of this movie were actually filmed in Mexico. The rest, of course, Almeria, Spain, and Rome, Italy. I'm not sure what scenes were filmed in Mexico. I'm going to assume all the scenes that take place in Mexico, since they are supposed to be in Mexico at this point. So they ride past these things, which I guess represent the Mexican-American border? I don't know. I guess it was far less guarded in those days. Once in Mexico, they ride into the first village they hit one night, and boy, they're having a party here. You would think it was the Day of the Dead or something.
Like this is it.
But no, it turns out they're all really celebrating the arrival of their new savior, Kapocalypse, who is also actually still present for the celebration. So it's clear that he's now showered them with Cat and Hutch's gold. I imagine there can't be very much left at this point. Meanwhile, Kapocalypse maintains a safe distance while deciding how to deal with Cat and Hutch. So Hutch just keeps getting more and more pissed, then more and more intoxicated. Hell, everyone's having a great time even though they apparently have no dental plan whatsoever.
So long, dental plan! Dental plan!
Lisa needs braces.
Oh, shit. Man, I thought I had bad teeth. Damn.
So it's at this point that Hutch decides to say, I guess, to hell with it and have a good time.
The hell with it. It's me that's paying.
Yeah! Right on, Hutch. Fuck it, right? Let's get into it. Hell, you're a better dancer than I am. Fuck.
That's when Hutch finally spots and gets his hands on Kapocalypse. He looks around for Cat, but Kapocalypse explains that he sent him off on a wild goose chase in the wrong direction looking for him. So with Cat out of the picture for a bit, Kapocalypse uses this time to sober up Hutch, so he can, run his mouth again. He is explaining himself and details related to the main plot, so you need to pay attention here. Now for some reason he does all of this in some kind of local nursery loaded with crying babies. He goes on to explain how he was screwed over by 3 friends. Enter that twitch again. And it was with those 3 friends that he robbed a bank. And during their escape, with the law hot on their tail, one of his close friends shoots his horse out from under him, leaving him behind to be captured. Left with the false hope from one of them that they did it to hold off the posse and that they'd be back to free him.
You hold them off till we catch our breath, and we'll come back and free you.
As we already know, this was not the case. They fucked him over and let him spend 15 years in a hard labor prison camp, only to frame him for murder the minute he got out. Some friends, huh? And since childhood, too. God. So then he brings Hutch up to speed on how many of these friends he's enacted his revenge on so far.
The words me, I took care of first.
The first being Mr. Harold, as we already know, and the previously mentioned other 2, Paco and Drake.
It's his turn tomorrow.
Kapocalypse plans on taking care of old Paco in the morning. Kapocalypse then uses Hutch by telling him that once he gets the money from Paco that is owed to him, he'll use it to pay Hutch back what he stole. Can you believe that? However, this is enough for Hutch and he's in, and wakes the crying babies anyway. Shit. Oh well. So then cut to the next morning, where we're at another Mexican village being run by some sort of corrupt government dictatorship, executing people for crimes against the country or something. But apparently this is where Paco's been hanging out. So we see Hutch and Kapocalypse sneak in dressed as locals. And that's when Hutch asks Kapocalypse, what the hell do we do now? And he replies with a very confident,
Leave it to me.
That immediately jump cuts to the 2 of them already captured and about to be executed. Boing. Then, if not by miracle of perfect timing, just to keep the movie going, the fort is suddenly under attack by another village of Mexicans, causing a gun battle to erupt that allows Kapocalypse and Hutch time to escape and take cover. And then Cat literally drops out of nowhere, like a cat, wow, lands right on all fours, twos, or an angel from heaven with beautiful blue eyes. Any way you want to look at it. Cat is here now. Don't ask how he found him, but he does fill them in that it was actually him that brought this attack on, since he told them if they did, Kapocalypse could pay them. He was really well off or some line of shit, just to get him to go attack the fort and save their friggin' lives, which he did. Thank you, Cat. And we get to see Cat use his throwing knife again. He also displays his cat-like acrobatic skills again. Can't get enough of that. Alley-oop! And then there's this questionable move. Almost like something out of a Roadrunner versus a Coyote cartoon. Ga-boink! See, the slow evolution of their comedies to come. So Hutch goes after Kapocalypse, while Cat goes Gatling gun happy. Bam bada bam bam. And that's when Kapocalypse finally tracks down Paco and all this mess so they can have their final showdown.
Here we are, just the two of us, all alone.
Which Kapocalypse naturally wins, leaving Hutch disappointed as hell that he didn't get his money that he owed him before he died.
Did you make him? Give back the money.
I forgot.
Ah, Paco, we hardly knew you. So cut to the aftermath of this whole battle, where these local invaders have taken the whole town now. They're putting on trial and executing the very same corrupt government that we just saw doing the very same thing before. So justice, I guess? Get what you give. Now how do you like it? Shoes on the other foot now. You know. Kapocalypse not actually having the gold or any kind of money. He's taken prisoner along with Cat and Hutch. Yikes, again with the bad teeth. I get it, they had no dental plan, right?
Dental plan!
Lisa needs braces.
So that night, Kapocalypse uses his rambling about his grandfather abilities to tell a story so boring that puts the Mexicans guarding them right to sleep, allowing them time to escape. Even though I personally found his story to be quite interesting, and very sad. Depressing even.
And he grew up and raised a family in a small mining town. And he had just the time to do it when someone shot him dead.
Shot him dead? I mean, no wonder you're fucked up, man.
And my grandfather, told of it, had to get his son's body. And he had to take me too, still teething, back to his tribe. And I cried.
Stop, alright? You're gonna make me cry. Damn.
And I cried.
No shit you cried. Any child would.
And I cried.
My freaking gosh, man. That shit true? I feel bad for you. I'm sorry, man. Damn. What a shitty world. Fuck. I didn't need to hear how depressing that was, but fascinating storytelling anyway. Thanks for that, Kapoca Melissa, whatever your name is. Damn, I need to get some sleep. Always a depressing story you gotta tell somebody. You like my mother, tell me all the bad news. Shit.
And I cried.
Who cried?
Once again, a lot of talking that really does help shape him as a character. You really get to see where this guy Kapocalypse comes from, and why he is who he is, somewhat. Through this grandfatherly advice, Cat and Kapocalypse are able to come to an arrangement that if they assist him in his escape, he'll return what's left of the gold to them. Only he has to agree to no funny stuff this time. Even though seconds after they free him, he pockets the first gun he sees. Unbeknownst to Cat and Hutch, of course, as they creep away into the night. When, kaboom! We jump cut to morning and the Mexicans are hot on their tail as they make their escape. They go a little ways through some locations that I swear that were also used in God Forgives, I Don't. These landscapes are very familiar after you've seen these movies enough times. And that's when Kapocalypse uses his newfound gun to cleverly, with very nice shooting and perfect aim, shoots the saddles off Cat and Hutch's horses, throwing them to the ground as their horses run free, completely unscathed by the bullet. It's amazing how he did that. Although given the chance to shoot him, they do let the idiot go.
Don't shoot her!
right before he rattles off another piece of grandfatherly gibberish.
1 hour is not enough! 2 is too many!
He already told me that damn story.
Cat and Hutch then come up with a plan, super fast, that actually works. As the pursuing Mexican posse comes around the corner, they use a rope to trip the horses of the last 2 riders, and thus apprehend them for themselves and go right after Kapocalypse again. This is beginning to become a theme in this movie, tracking down Kapocalypse. But to be fair, Kapocalypse does have one more score to settle. Remember the previously mentioned Drake?
What about Drake?
He settled in Fair City, near Memphis, went into business.
He still awaits in Fair City. Pay attention. This isn't a Marvel movie with its flashy effects and Chris Hemsworth muscles, alright? Not that I have a problem with any of that. It's a totally different movie. They head back to the States to track Kapocalypse down, back in the good old USA with their slaves, I guess? A couple of dead Mexicans later, and they arrive in Fair City, finally. The last known location of the Drake. I'm calling him that now, the Drake. Like in Seinfeld.
Boy, I'm really starting to dislike the Drake.
Hate the Drake!
Apocalypse's final score to 7. Once there, Cat and Hutch enter a bar and grill where a crowd gathers around to watch 2 guys playing pool while still seated on their horse. Interesting, if not anything. You really can bet on anything. So as Hutch takes a seat so he can get some food, Cat spots Kapocalypse working in the very same establishment as a dishwasher with our old friend Thomas the Tightrope Walker and his lady friend. So they go and make themselves known. Smash. Then we see a very pissed Hutch who just wants his gold back at this point, whatever's left of it.
Hello, friends!
That's when Kapocalypse points out the gambling house across the street from where they're at. Hutch then realizes that Kapocalypse is trying to tell him that he gambled the remainder of his money away. This does not amuse Hutch in the least. And he does that, yeah. He tosses him across the room, gives him a good hit, yeah.
I didn't do it.
Actually you did. We just saw you do it. But we understand why, Hutch. We understand why.
You know, gambling is a terrible vice.
However, once he regains consciousness, Kapocalypse points out to him that washing dishes brings ideas.
There's something very strange going on in that shack. Washing dishes brings ideas.
Don't I know it? From personal experience.
And sure enough, I get one.
That's not how you hold a stack of plates, Kapocalypse. I'm talking to a professional here.
Damn it, Apocalypse! That's the 3rd time this week. One more time, and you're done. Damn it! That one's coming out of your pay. Boy, a good dishwasher's hard to find these days. Shit.
So clearly, Kapocalypse is in Fair City to find the Drake.
Hate the Drake!
And it so happens to turn out that he also runs that very same gambling house. Can you believe it? That's what he went into business for, as he mentioned before in the movie. So Kapocalypse believes that with a man like the Drake,
Hate the Drake!
there's a lot more going on in that gambling house than meets the eye. He's a crooked bastard, he is. He also claims that he was waiting around for Cat and Hutch to show up and find him so he could help him enact his plan and get revenge on the Drake.
Hate the Drake!
His sweet, bloody revenge, or whatever it is that he wants to do to this guy. Probably just shoot him like he did to the other 2, right? Bam. Bam. No more Harold, no more Paco. Probably no more Drake pretty soon.
Hate the Drake!
We've got the Drake's gambling house. Enter Hutch and Cat. A real fancy place too, another great set for the movie. Hutch tries his hand at gambling and loses miserably. They then proceed to scope the place out. Cat then starts to pick up on something. Something to do with the ceiling. Randomly cut to a traveling street fighter and his manager who's taking bets that no one can knock this beast of a man out. This is a random element of the movie they just threw in there. That they probably didn't have to throw in there, but like, why the hell not? It gives Bud Spencer a chance to bonk somebody with his fist for a few minutes. That's all this scene is, so they can make a few bucks. Cat then gets the idea that this is a good way to double their money so they can buy supplies and have enough money to gamble at the gambling house. So he just volunteers Hutch to fight this guy.
Not me. Yeah.
Because to Cat, Hutch is just some undefeatable freak of human nature that he even once used to carry a heavy-ass chest of gold on his back and still didn't care about his well-being. Just use him, he can handle it. He's a monstrosity. But Hutch goes along with it, and the two go at it for a while. Just bonking each other on the head and punching each other in the face again and again. Finally, yeah, Hutch wins. Boom, finally. Enough punching and he's able to knock this professional fighter out. I guess. This guy does this for a living, but Hutch is such a freak of human nature that you could just repeatedly punch him and nothing will happen. So yeah, Hutch wins. Boxing of the Old West. A fascinating species we are. And they used some of the money to buy Hutch a bullet-spraying gun. And then that following night, Cat and Thomas the Tightroper put on a really elaborate show just to break into the gambling house so they can have a little look around and see what illegal activity could be going on. Real impressive cat-like acrobats too. Thank God the two of them were professional circus performers. Think Hutch could do that? Or Capocalypse, for that matter? Once Cat is in, he lets Thomas and Hutch inside. Capocalypse is then given some money and given instructions to show up at the gambling house when it opens and start betting on the roulette table. Any number. Easy job, right? You got one job, Capocalypse. Don't mess it up. And don't do anything stupid this time, or I'm pretty sure Cat's gonna kill you. I'm sure he's getting tired of all this tracking you all over the West shit.
This time, if you get even one little idea in that worm-eaten head of yours, I'll kill you.
So once inside the gambling house, they check out the attic, naturally, and there they find a removable panel on the floor that allows you to look right down at the roulette table. Ooh, how interesting, huh? However, this doesn't totally explain everything. That's when Cat points out a strange metal pipe leading to the cellar. So they go to the cellar and find the explanation. From the cellar, you can access the roulette wheel from under the table by placing a magnet on the number you want to win.
A magnet. Two people are enough to control the game. One above decides the winning number, and one here places this on the same number.
As Cat explains in the movie. A simple but clever and elaborate way to cheat people. So the plan now is to basically sit it out and wait there until the gambling house opens. That's when we cut to Capocalypse, who's getting plastered when a hooker who, from a distance, looks like Patrick Swayze from Tu Wong Fu. Thanks for everything, Julie Newmar. Until she gets a little closer and you see it's not. And she decides to seduce him, but not before making him buy her a drink because, well, you know, you need to have a drink or two before you bang Eli Wallach. So that morning arrives, and Cat and Hutch are still waiting it out in a hot-ass attic, where we're treated to a topless Cat and Hutch in the attic scene. Cat watches from the window and sees the gamblers start to show up as the gambling house opens for business. Cat then alerts Thomas in the cellar that it's showtime. Be alert.
Here we go. Okay.
So when the real swindlers who work for the gambling house show up to do their parts in the attic and cellar, they're met with attack and tied up. Hutch then uses what he calls love taps. Yeah, that's what he calls them. To bring one of them too so he can explain a few things about what's going on here.
But only love taps.
So at that point, all they're waiting on is Capocalypse to show up and start gambling. Who we cut to as he's just getting out of bed, only to discover the hooker from the night before stole all his money. Oi. So he's already fucked his end of this out, but no money to gamble at the gambling house. Hutch got his face beat in for no reason. Well, he did get that gun. So he has to come up with a plan quick now. And by that I mean force con a douchey rich guy out of whatever cash he's carried.
Queen for you, king for me. I win. Of course, the ace is always high.
And hey, he said the name of the movie right there.
Of course, the ace is always high.
We have a title. I guess we're not going with God Forgives, I Don't, Part 2.
You like it?
No.
could have been that simple, right?
All right,
So this whole con that he throws together in 2 seconds works, I guess, where he pretty much just forces the guy to give him his money. And he heads straight to the gambling house, pushes his way in, and starts playing roulette. And he bets on the number 13. Lucky 13, right?
13.
And with Cat and Thomas now controlling the game, he wins, of course. Only the dope keeps betting on the same number, 13 again.
Leave it all. Leave it all.
Go on, all hell's gonna break loose.
Right.
So people are gonna start to get wise now as the employees of the gambling house find the entrances to the attic and the cellar locked and start trying to force their way in, of course. That's when we cut to, yeah! Kevin McCarthy, finally! The credits promised me he would be in this movie. Here he finally is for the last 10 minutes of the film and is having some sort of meeting somewhere in the gambling house. And boy, is this a polished and fancy dressed Kevin McCarthy too, with his old West rich douchebag perfectly white suit like the Colonel. Hey, wait a minute, is that the same guy Apocalypse just ripped off seconds ago? And he still showed up for work, huh? Good for him. You're a real trooper. Kevin McCarthy is then quickly pulled away to deal with what's going on at the roulette table. And by quickly, I mean record-breaking quickly. Which is when we discover what you probably assumed at this point, if you were paying attention, is that Kevin McCarthy is the Drake. The one Apocalypse is looking for. You know, the one who runs the damn gambling house.
I don't even like Drake.
You don't like the Drake?
I hate the Drake.
I love the Drake.
How could you not like the Drake?
Who's the Drake?
Who's the Drake?
The Drake is good.
The last of his former friends who screwed him over. So back at the roulette table, Apocalypse is still making wild bets on that same number 13.
Still on number 13?
Yeah,
It'd be a miracle.
I believe in miracles.
Fool doesn't even try to keep up appearances.
Either he's stupid or he just doesn't care at this point. Let it roll. 13 again. Yes, let's 13. Yes, let's roll 13. Yeah, why the hell not? I love Eli Wallach. Hutch then faces off with one of the gambling house henchmen. Then back to the Drake, who pushes his way through the crowd around the roulette table to find Apocalypse. Bum bum bum. After all these years, they exchange looks, and the Drake's not too happy to see him, and remembers why in a brief flashback that we get to see of when he left him to be captured. Imagine what that's like for the Drake. Back after 15 years, he has every right to hate you.
Hate the Drake!
So the Hutch fight goes on while the Drake demands that they just pay off Apocalypse and then send for the sheriff, since he knows Apocalypse is also a wanted man.
Bam! And send for the sheriff.
That's when Cat steps in and puts the Drake on the spot by pointing out what might happen if the sheriff should have a look around this place. Like under that roulette table, for example. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, know what I mean. Things then get really heated when someone takes a shot at Cat. Regular players in the place all then hit the floor, and then in an instant, all the main characters are in the main gambling room. Hutch, Thomas, the whole shebang. And before any of this shit goes any further, Hutch makes sure they're getting paid. He's making sure they're getting their money. He goes right up to the counter and just takes it. Nothing's messing that up for him this time.
Don't forget the small change.
Apocalypse then arms himself so he can shoot it out with the Drake. Things get even more heated when the stooge who works for the Drake is being a real dick and gets all racist with Thomas.
It would be impossible for me to fight against a Negro on equal terms.
Oh, no you didn't! Thomas didn't like that shit. See the look in his face? That's your ass, man. Fucking a-hole. Now I'm rooting mostly for Thomas at this point. And a little bit for Apocalypse, of course. Drake then brings on some insults of his own aimed directly at Apocalypse, making fun of his name, saying that he's not even a real man, in a weird, not even a real man voice.
Is that a man? A real man?
Just pitiful, even though he once called him a friend. He even makes fun of his twitchy scratching thing.
Oh, you still scratch yourself, do you?
Drake's a dick. Hate the Drake! Snotty, rich, crooked a-holes of the old West.
Boy, I'm really starting to dislike the Drake.
Hate the Drake!
So they do agree to end it the way they always do with these movies, with a showdown! Bam, 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 bam! Cat, Hutch, Thomas, and Apocalypse versus the Drake and his band of cronies. They decide to use the roulette wheel as a signal as to when to start the shooting. When the ball stops, fire away. So they line up for the shootout when Apocalypse makes one strange request before they start this thing, just to be difficult.
Wait a minute.
Since he's been fantasizing about this moment for the last 15 years while he was locked up in a prison labor camp, he fantasized this moment, but when he fantasized about it, he fantasized it with music playing in the background. A slow waltz as he requests that there has to be music or this friggin' thing can't happen.
I want music.
He wants music.
So somebody go and get a boombox or a CD player or something that existed in the Old West. A guy with a violin, anything. And he gets it too. So the showdown can begin and we can wrap this whole thing up. Everyone's on board too. Even though this fight is primarily between Apocalypse and the Drake, they all seem totally fine with shooting it up with total strangers that they just met a few minutes ago. All ready to die for Apocalypse and his revenge. Hutch clutching onto what he cares about most in all this, and he doesn't let go of it once through this whole showdown. Even when he's shooting the person he's killing, he's still holding on to the bag of money with one hand. As for Cat, at this point, he seemed more concerned about exposing the gambling house for cheating their customers for all these years. How noble of him. He's a hard character to figure out, that Cat. Like, what motivates him, what drives him, like I was saying, is just weird. As for Thomas, well, he's still all smiles, along for the ride I suppose, even in the shootout, still smiling. Helped these nice white folks out I guess. It was definitely essential to have around. Would never have gone into that gambling house with him swinging like an acrobat from that rope, balancing on a line. So the slow waltz plays, and again, it's lovely music, a beautiful waltz. I like it. Spaghetti westerns never disappoint on a memorable score. So the showdown has begun, and they all start walking backwards slowly across the floor, covered with customers. We're just pretty much watching the show at this point. So when the roulette ball finally comes to a stop, on 13 again of course, the shooting begins. Bam, bada, bam, bam, bam. Each with their assigned bad guy target. Every one of the good guys wins, of course. However, the Apocalypse lets the Drake live by simply shooting his gunfire gear, leaving him the last man standing. Guess he's not quite finished yet. Probably so he can go on some rant of some kind.
A rope around that fine perfumed neck.
Apocalypse has decided he would rather see the Drake hang for having this crooked gambling house and cheating all the people of Fair City for all these years. Fair City. It's everything but that.
Not a bad idea.
The locals, still laying on the floor, promise to see this through.
You can count him.
Since it was them that Drake has been cheating for all these years. This way the Drake can suffer the same way Apocalypse did. Eye for an eye, I guess. There's a lot of lessons in this movie that are questionable, I'm sure, but still, it's fun. Then, just as he's about to rattle off more grandfatherly advice, Apocalypse seemingly drops dead to the ground, having apparently been shot during all this.
My grandfather used to say.
But a quick bet between Cat and Hutch proved that he's only been wounded. Well, that's a relief. That was a quick half a second of thinking he was dead. The Drake then quickly produces a hidden gun and makes an attempt to get away by using a random woman as a hostage, only to immediately be foiled by Cat's cat-like reflexes. Bam, bada, bam, bam. That's your last dirty trick. After that, all the cheated patrons arise and go right to work in the Drake. Ah, frontier justice, right? Hate the Drake, kill the Drake, hang the Drake, beat the Drake to death. We don't care.
Hate the Drake!
And that pretty much wraps it up into one neat little package of grandfatherly advice. After that, we see Apocalypse, Cat, Hutch, Thomas, and his lady friend ride off together to that same lovely waltz, only to split up into two groups as we cut to that end of the western wide shot. More awesome ending music. Nice, as usual. Cat, Hutch, and Apocalypse ride off together to, I guess, the plot of the third movie, Boot Hill, that came out the very next year. But sadly does not feature Eli Wallach in the role of Apocalypse, or Eli Wallach at all. Then there's even some scrolling credits at the end of this one, all to that lovely waltz again. So there you have it, that was Ace High, the sequel to God Forgives, ... I don't, exclamation point. Only this was just plain old Ace High, no exclamation point needed. A real fun ride in my opinion. I love this movie too, it's a great sequel and it's a great spaghetti western. And it's definitely a forgotten, unknown, and underappreciated one. To me. Which gets me right into my final thoughts on 1968's Ace High. First, I love how in tune the writing was to the original film. Italian director Giuseppe Colizzi wrote and directed this, as he did with all three, and stayed loyal to the already established storyline. Like how the gold stolen from the train in the first film belonged to the Herald Bank, which they only mentioned one time in God Forgives, I Don't.
Why are you so interested in this business?
The Herald Bank took out a policy for the whole amount against its safe arrival.
You never actually see the bank. You just mention it that one time. Then there's Bill San Antonio, who reveals at the end of the film that this whole time he's been partners with the president of the Herald Bank, a character we never see in that film. And then comes the sequel, and not only do we get to see the Herald Bank itself, but also the man himself, Mr. Herald, the bank president who was partners with Bill in the first film. And this isn't just some poopy fan fodder or anything. He's totally relevant to the movie's storyline, to the point where he was once best friends and grew up with the main character, Apocalypse. And then there's Eli Wallach, who I just had to talk about for a second or two. As an actor, I love Eli Wallach. He was great in this film, just like he was in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. As I said before, this movie credits him first, and you can see why. With Cat and Hutch just following him around the whole time, chasing him down just because he stole their gold. All along for the ride, but it does work for me though. It's still their movie at the same time as it is his. And they did make really good use of their bigger budget too, I think. They've come a long way from dilapidated pueblos from the first film to the fancy street sets and gambling houses of this one. Tuco and Apocalypse are sort of the same guy, but yet not, with Tuco being a far greedier person than Apocalypse. Like I said, Eli Wallach is an excellent actor and was excellent in this role. It's one of my favorite parts of this movie. He really made this character work. With a background, with characteristics and strange flaws, it made him an easy target for everyone in society to pick on, even his loved ones. And Eli Wallach knew what to do with the role because it worked for him. It was pretty much probably written for him. So he could really give this character. Which leads me to Terence Hill as Cat Stevens, who I also think is a great actor. That made this role work for him just enough. It still feels like there's something missing there as far as the Cat character is concerned. Cat is a cool character and Terence Hill most certainly has the right look for it. But he doesn't flesh it out nearly as well as Eli Wallach did with Apocalypse. However, I don't think that's Terence Hill's fault. At this point, I couldn't even imagine anyone else in the role of Cat Stevens but Terence Hill. But it was actually first cast to another actor, who due to an injury couldn't do the role. So the role went to Terence Hill instead, because he had the right look and he was an actor. Still, this minor cast change had to happen. It was the first pairing of Terence Hill and Bud Spencer, and would have completely changed the outcome of their acting careers. The Trinity films may have never happened. Thus, every comedy they did after that would have ceased to exist, or would cease to exist. Now the problem with Terence Hill's Cat Stevens was hard to figure out. There's not a lot of information out there on this film, and very little as far as reviews go, like little to none really. But I did read one review that someone left on IMDb, and they described it as Terence Hill didn't seem to know what to do with the role of Cat Stevens. And that makes sense to me. After all, if you look at the films of Terence Hill, he mostly did comedies. The only times he played it straight was in his early films, like as Cat Stevens or the one time that he played Django. And damn, he was great again in the role of Django. Again, he had the look. Great actor, just better suited for slapstick comedy because it works better for him, I think, as an actor. Cat Stevens, like Django, barely cracks a smile through the entire run of the movie usually. But in the end, Terence Hill does make a great Cat Stevens. And even though he wasn't able to give him more character, that in itself is character. The whole mystery of who this guy is and what really makes him tick, we'll never know. Nothing seemed to faze him, even tons of money. And through some parts of this movie, all he's doing is sleeping. You know, like a cat. Eh? Hutch sort of points this out even at one point.
You put your hands on a mountain of money, and for you it's the most natural thing in the world.
What's the deal with this guy, Cat Stevens? Is he actually a cat in a human's body, maybe? How does he have all these circus performer skills anyway? Was he maybe previously in the circus? Now, as for the other actors in A-Side, because there are some notable names here. First is Brock Peters, as Thomas the Tightroper and circus performer. On a personal note, I love this character. I find him to be the most relatable, actually. As for someone who's done dishes for the same reason this guy has. Plus, as I said, he's always happy. No matter what, considering he's a black man in the 1800s American West, that's almost hard to believe. Brock Peters also appeared in To Kill a Mockingbird, Soylent Green, and was well known for being in 2 the original Star Trek films, Star Trek The Voyage Home and The Undiscovered Country as Admiral Carver. He appeared again on Star Trek Deep Space Nine, only this time he was playing Joseph Sisko. He also did the voice of Lucius Fox on Batman, the animated series. The last fact I have on Brock Peters that was interesting to me, not any Star Wars fan knows all about the Star Wars Holiday Special, but have you heard of the Star Wars radio drama? Yeah, it happened. I'm not sure if it's bad or not. I've never listened to it. There was one apparently. Not sure if it still exists, like I said, anywhere. But the first broadcast of A New Hope was in 1981. They did one of Empire in 1983. And then for some reason they waited all the way to 1996 to do Return of the Jedi. And in this radio drama, Brock Peters did the voice of Darth Vader. And finally, before I go, there's actor Kevin McCarthy, who did finally show up for the last 10 minutes of this movie in a pretty important role as the final villain, clearly like the most evil one, Kevin McCarthy as the Drake.
Hate the Drake!
But with this very little screen time, he still manages to put on a pretty good show. For Kevin McCarthy is a good actor too. And he got to use his real voice, just like Brock Peters.
Is that a man? A real man?
This cocky former friend has screwed over Apocalypse. It's almost hard to believe they were ever friends the way that he acts now. Actor Kevin McCarthy is primarily remembered for starring in the original 1956 sci-fi classic Invasion of the Body Snatchers. He did a ton of TV. I mostly remember him in a Twilight Zone episode where he was the guy who had been alive for thousands of years, only to get shot dead in the end by a former lover who was like really old now. He was also in a Twilight Zone movie, the segment directed by Joe Dante, who also directed him in Inner Space, among other films. He was in that Weird Al movie, UHF, and had a small part later in life in the Looney Tunes Back in Action film, also directed by Joe Dante, I believe. Or Dante, I don't know how he says his last name. Just like Brock Peters, he also did a voice in Batman the Animated Series, only it wasn't a big character who did many episodes like Lucius Fox. It was a character called Dr. Long. It was in one episode. Kevin McCarthy died on 9/11 of 2010 at the age of 96 from pneumonia. So he had a pretty good run. Just like Eli Wallach, who also died in his 90s. So that's about it, I guess. I mean, I could go on and on about Ace High and why I think it's a great spaghetti western and underappreciated. But I should probably stop now. I think I've said enough for the time being. So adios, folks, and I'll see you at the movies. And I do plan on doing a Boot Hill video, too. Whether or not this gets even 100 views, I'm still going to keep doing it. It's the reason I did the first one. I enjoyed it, so that's that. I usually don't say this in my videos because I figure people already know this, but feel free to like, subscribe, comment, whatever the hell it is people do these days. Whatever tickles your fancy. Good night, y'all. Okay, so you want to be a dishwasher here, huh? Well, you can't be any worse than that Apocalypse guy, so, well, we're pretty desperate. We'll take what we can get. When can you start? When do you want to start your luxurious career as a dishwasher? Here at Farmer Spaghetti's Bar and Grill.
And you might be interested to know that we have a really good dental plan here. Just say.
Dental plan!
Lisa needs braces.
Hello, friends.
Hey gamers, are you tired of the same old phone app games? Well,
step aside, Candy Crush. Go fly a kite, Angry Birds, because the latest new video game app to hit your iPhone has just arrived.
This is a track phone, dipshit. Can't get apps in this friggin' thing.
You've seen Ace High, or not, but you'll want to jump on this bandwagon anyway, so you're not the only one not talking about this new iPhone rage. Get Cacopolis! Now you can track down Cacopolis just like Cat and Hutch. With every step, you get closer and closer to a large pile of your very own gold.
Wow, my mind's blown.
It's easy. Cacopolis stole your gold. Now you're gonna steal it back. Track down Cacopolis from Texas to Mexico and all the way back again. But watch out! If you don't track him down quickly enough, by the time you get there, most, if not all, of your gold will be gone.
Oh, don't take it so badly.
And the chase is back on. Get Cacopolis! And if you're a master tracker, you can track Cacopolis all the way back to the US and all the way to Fair City Gambling House for the final showdown. Get Cacopolis before he gets you. Get Cacopolis, available on most iPhone apps.
Happy? Get Cacopolis.
Also available on original Nintendo.
Wow, my mind is blown. I'm so addicted to this Get Cacopolis. How did I ever live without this stupid phone app before? Get Cacopolis, folks.
Get Cacopolis!